Hey, digital listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, let's watch. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. As I always say, don't use YouTube as a replacement for therapy. If you need a therapist, get one. You deserve it. Let's watch.
We're going to have to push the wedding back like a whole other month because the one venue that I wanted fell through.
Are you kidding me?
And everybody's booking up these venues super fast.
I don't really care about the place.
Well, I do because I don't plan on getting married more than one time.
Okay, so we hear that there is a difference of opinion. And when I work with couples, I will say, okay, let's be careful how we communicate. Let's take some ownership. Let's take our time. Let's follow the procedure that we've talked about. Let's own our feelings. What's the baseline feeling? Is it fear? Is it hurt? Avoid getting angry, avoid distancing, avoid the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that John Gottman, him and his colleagues, the researchers at the University of Washington, my alma mater, where I'm always proud of that, where they found that defensiveness, stonewalling, criticism, and contempt are signs that divorce or a breakup, or at the very least a very unhappy relationship, is occurring or will grow. So for her, she wants to apparently have a wedding in this particular place, and it was canceled, so she wants to push the date back, and it sounds like he doesn't want to do that.
So...
Oh my God. Why we can't have it in our backyard or something?
on a dirt patch in the backyard.
Why not?
Okay, so this is classic. Every couple does this. Maybe every relationship does this. She lays out, I have to tell you, we have to push the date back because there was a problem with the venue. Now, he clearly wants it to happen sooner. I don't know exactly why. Maybe because of the visa or something. Or he just doesn't really care about an expensive or fancy-ish wedding. It doesn't sound like her wedding is going to be super fancy, but just at a venue anyway. And so he's saying, how come we can't just have it in the backyard? And then she's like on a dirt patch? Okay. So for him, he could have done a little bit better by saying something like, look, I totally get that you want it to be at a nice place, but my preference is different. I don't really care about that, and I'd rather get married earlier and have it be anywhere because that's my goal here. I want to be married to you, or whatever he says. But sounds like you have a different preference. Can we talk about that? But he didn't do anything, awful. I mean, it was pretty typical. But her response is starting to escalate it because, she says, on a dirt patch, like, your idea is ridiculous, okay? So this is criticism, kind of has a little bit of contempt in there. So she could have said something like, well, okay, I hear you, and for me, this is not really my preference. I'd like to have it at a nicer venue. Usually want to stay on the positive side. All you parents out there, you know that you do this with your kids. Instead of saying something like, I'm really angry at you that you didn't put away your toys. We know that when you, and of course you teachers of any age, you know that it's much more positive, much more likely to have a good effect, much more likely to shape behavior in the child if you say, you know what, I really love it when you put your toys away, even though inside you're thinking, I don't like it when you don't put your toys away. But when you say, I like it when you do this, it invites people into that space instead of shaming them or hurting their feelings, gives them a way forward so that they can actually please you, instead of just recognizing that they're not being pleasing to you. So she could have said something more in the positive, like, well, I would really like it at a nice venue because this is a special thing for me. And it's also, it's taking it a little far, like a dirt patch. I mean, I don't know, but I'm guessing her backyard isn't awful. New Mexico, Albuquerque, it tends to have pretty good weather, sunny. So I'm guessing it's not like a dump or something. Her inside of her house, it looks pretty good. So for him, it's like the way she responded, it's like he said, I want to get married in a toilet or something. And that could hurt his feelings. Now, I'm guessing this isn't going to happen, but he could respond in a healthy way by saying, well, when you put it that way, yeah, that sounds pretty awful. But to me, I could see it working out well. I get that you don't want to do that, and that's fine. But I have to say, the way you responded kind of hurt my feelings. It had a little tone to it. Now, he kind of started with the tone, but this is typical. There's a little bit of a transgression, then there's an escalation and an escalation. Let's see how they manage.
Like a white dress on a pile of dirt. No thanks, sorry.
And then what I think about sarcasm. We've heard that from Emily. She even slightly rolled her eyes. That's not helpful. If we were in a situation where Mohamed was like, I was thinking about taking your son and going rock climbing without any safety harnesses. Like, there are situations maybe where a little bit of sarcasm would be called for. There's no need that you have to do it, but there are situations where it's clearly beyond the pale of reasonable behavior or request that you could kind of go, wait, so you want to take my son who's never been rock climbing and not use any safety harnesses? Yeah, that sounds safe. Okay, that's sarcasm, but maybe it calls for it. I don't think this calls for it. There's other ways to communicate. And I talk about this all the time, that I found over time that in the 25 years working with clients about assertiveness, and I think she does have an issue. She's doing a lot better as the season progresses than before, but the first phase of assertiveness is where you let everyone walk on you, but you're secretly very, very angry. The second phase is where you're saying no, and you're kind of acting like a teenager. And then the third phase is where you assert yourself, but you take into consideration the other person's feelings. You're not sarcastic, you're not critical, you're not rebellious, you're just assertive, but you also listen to the other person, and you might even through a assertive process say, well, okay, we'll go with you this time, and that's okay. You want this more than I do, or whatever. Assertiveness for a lot of people, they think it means getting your way, but that's not what it means. Assertiveness, there's different definitions of assertiveness, but really what we're looking for is differentiation, standing up for yourself, taking into consideration the other person's feelings, thinking about the big picture, and being firm but flexible. And that middle phase is necessary, though, and she might be kind of heading into that for clients that I work with, when they emerge out of being dependent and passive and a doormat, it's necessary that they go through a middle phase where they end up acting more like a teenager, because developmentally they need to go through that phase. And the way that I think about it is that they're starting to recognize that they have needs and that they deserve to assert those needs. And that's an important part of being differentiated, being an adult, and everyone deserves that. We deserve to know what we want and assert it, not that we force it on other people, but that we state it firmly and confidently. But if you've never done that before and you're in this phase 2 of assertiveness, you're very ambivalent about your needs and about stating it, and you're very shy and you're very scared. And you also have probably a lot of trauma, particularly early in life, but maybe throughout your life, when you did state what you wanted, it wasn't received well, so you're nervous. It's like you're going on stage for the first time, and you've never sang a song before, but you've only sang in the shower, and this is your first time on the stage. You don't really know what's going on, and so as you step into that space of asserting your needs, you're shy. And of course, the first time we go on stage, we might act a little snotty, like your singing coach comes over to you and says, you're going to do a great job. And you're just like, get out of my way, I'm nervous, or whatever. Not everyone to do that, but, just think 13-year-olds as they go to school for a new school for the first time. They're insecure, and then they'll snap at you. And so when the individuals that are trying to be assertive start to be assertive, they can be, let's just say, a little snotty at times, a little abrasive at times, a little unreasonable, unrefined in their assertiveness. But without going through that, everyone needs to go on stage the first time, right? Everyone has to go through that. And you do that enough times, and then you can go to phase 3, where you can actually relax and be assertive and listen and just take your time. The problem is, though, that when passive dependent people try on that middle phase of assertiveness, it can go very poorly, particularly if the partner or whoever they're asserting themselves to isn't prepared and also might be dominant, because that's often a configuration that dependent passive people will engage in. And so and we might see this right now where Mohamed isn't used to her being assertive at all, and she's also not being very kind, and she's not being very reasonable. I mean, she's reasonable to make her request, but the way she's being sarcastic, and she's saying, on a dirt patch, I mean, that's ridiculous. And, it probably isn't ridiculous that he's saying it. She can certainly not want that. It can be a deal breaker for her, but to call someone else, and I've commented a lot about the passive dependence that she's exhibiting. I don't know if she has that, but in terms of the data we see in the show, I can never know if any of this is real or not, or representative of who they are. But when people are passive dependent and they have needs, it'll come out in these very odd ways and very ineffectual ways. And then when it doesn't go well, they conclude, oh, well, clearly this isn't working for me, so I'm going to go back to dependence and passivity. And they never realize that there's a third phase, but they have to go through this phase. The other thing that I do when I work with couples like this, or even individuals, is I will contact the partner, or the partner will be in the room, and I will say, so get ready, because your partner is trying on, and I even explain these three phases, and I say, so they are going to be a little unrefined, but it's important that we go through this phase, because we can't get to phase 3 without doing this. So you're going to have to accommodate a little bit, but it'll be temporary, and it won't be forever, and we'll talk about it. So that's what I would say to Mohamed. It's like, I think she might be trying on being more assertive, and you probably want that. I don't know if he would agree with that. So, but I don't know. Usually I'm able to explain it in a way that gets at the heart. For the Mohammeds of the world, I say, do you want a partner that is quietly angry and hurt all the time at you? Or would you rather have a partner that loves you unconditionally and 100%, but also gets their way sometimes, meaning you have to accommodate them? Which one do you want? And, it might take a while given some people's ideas about things. But anyway, so she was just sarcastic. Let's see what he does.
I don't feel good about it at all. I want to be allowed to work, and this takes already 6, maybe 8 months after I apply.
Okay, so that makes sense. He's saying, I really want to work, and if we push the wedding back another month, it means I have to push back working another month. Now, I'm guessing if you're Yve, you're like, well, what's another month if we spend the rest of our lives together? You're 25 years old. I don't think it's going to kill you to wait another month to start working. So there's that. But, that's his reasons, and he, and there's some logic to it, absolutely. So the way he responds is not really escalating it. He's saying, I don't really feel good about that at all, and he gives his reason. Because she's not really, well, she gave a little bit of a reason, but she could have she could have said more in terms of her reasoning about why, to help him understand where she's coming from. Maybe she'll get there.
Thing is, if my mom already counting the days till I go back visit her, and I can't leave without my green card, as you know.
Okay, so that's another reason that would make sense. He could do a lot better, by the way. So what he could do is he could say, I get that you want to have this nice wedding, and I do too, but I'll tell you, I'm super anxious about getting to work and seeing my family, and it's so hard on me and my mom that if we push it back another month, that it just doesn't seem worth it to me in terms of what I'm looking for. And I know maybe for you, these are maybe not important things, but these are very important things to me. And so, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to get my way here, but can you understand that? But of course, he doesn't say that.
We need to get married first so we can apply for my adjustment of status and then green card. If pushing the wedding couple weeks, that will affect me seeing my family. That's very frustrated to me.
You need to be a little more understanding that there's things out of my control.
So it's hard to tell how much this is edited. It seems clear that it is, but I don't know to what extent. I don't know if they're just taking out the silences or if there's other things that they're just leaving out. So I can never know what really happened. But okay, so we could hypothesize that as she was escalating in terms of sarcasm and ridiculing language, and then he brought it back down by saying, well, I don't really like that because I can't see my mom and I'm not going to be able to work. And then she brings it back down by saying, you have to be a little bit more understanding. Okay. Well, again, it's not ideal, right? So always think about, this is the key, people, is when in doubt, return to hurt or fear, pain or anxiety. So I'm guessing for her, it would be something like, well, I really want to have at least kind of a nice wedding. And if we don't do that, that would be really hurtful to me. I would feel like I was missing out on my dream. And for you to not care about that, it hurts my feelings. And I'm also worried that if we go either direction, if we go with your option of getting married in the backyard, that I'm going to be really sad and cry during the wedding. And I don't want that I want it to be a special event. I'm also worried that if I push it back a week, that you're going to be resentful of me. And so I don't know, I'm just kind of scared, and I'm hurt that it seems like you don't really care. And I'm worried that I'm going to feel hurt if I don't have at least kind of a special wedding. So that's owning your feelings, right? At no point are you trying to make an argument like, well, a patch of dirt, okay, that's a weird manifestation of several events that happen internally from that hurt or fear. That she has those things. I'm just going to take a guess. It's something along those lines. But she doesn't know those are the feelings happening primarily, or doesn't feel comfortable saying them, or isn't used to doing that. And so there's layers of anger and uncertainty and lack of assertiveness, and then frustration. And then what comes out is a patch of dirt in the backyard, a white dress on a patch of dirt. That's absurd. But what we say, it's at the very end of a very weird, convoluted road away from the origin. And if we speak from the origin, at the very least, if we know what's happening from the origin, we're much more effective, because for our partners, when they know that we're feeling hurt or afraid, and we're not blaming them for that, we're not accusing them, we're just saying, this is what's happening for me right now. The other person's empathy will be engaged, and a conversation will go much better. You might not get your way, but at the very least, understand. Most of the time, what's really happening in situations like this is they're on the surface, they're having a conversation about the debate about what's better and when they should get married. But 99% of what was really going on in this conversation is attachment injury. Because for her, she's probably feeling, slight attachment injury of just like, so I'm not safe with you. You don't care. Not safe, like physically safe, but I'm not safe to be vulnerable to you. And I feel vulnerable right now, and I feel like I'm asking for something which is at least kind of vulnerable, and you're not respecting it. You don't seem to care. It just seems like this doesn't even matter to you. For him, exactly the same, right? It's like he wants to work soon. He wants to see his family, and it hurts that she doesn't seem to care and doesn't seem to recognize the importance of that. Like she could say, look, I totally get that you want to see your family. It makes total sense. I want you to see your family as soon as possible. Totally makes sense that you want to work. I think that's really great. And I love that about you. So just flat, first off, I appreciate that and I get that. And that might go a long way, right? It might sort of warm him up and say, oh, okay, well, at least she understands me, and so I don't have to keep asserting that all the time.
Maybe you don't want to get married. Let me know, so I know from now.
Well, and then he just escalated it very high. So maybe you don't want to get married. And I think this is a game. I don't think he's being serious. And then her reaction is like, oh, please. And so he's I think trying to get her to succumb, it seems, given his pattern, it seems kind of like a pressure. Like, well, take it or leave it, woman, because if we don't get married ASAP, then I'm going home. I mean, that's kind of what it sounds like to me, but I don't think he means that, does he?
Well, if you're going to act like that, maybe I should think about it.
So I can start packing my bags.
So then she meets him on the escalation, and then he is now doubling down. Regardless of what they're trying to work out here, this kind of conversation will not be soon forgotten. You know, like with me and my wife, we've never had a conversation like this. There have probably been times in our years together where we were very upset at each other or very hurt or something. But at no point did either one of us ever say even something close to this, because I think we both know, or it just doesn't occur to us or something, that when you say things like this, you'll never forget it. For you out there who are in a current relationship. And I'm guessing that the few times, or at least some of the times, that divorce is brought up or this sort of conversation is brought up, it's like, you don't forget that. It's really destructive. And if you mean it, then great. But if you don't play around with that kind of language.
That's rude.
All right, well, if you want to support what we're doing here, you can become a patron of the podcast by going to patreon.com or clicking the link below. By becoming a patron of the podcast, you are literally giving me the ability to do videos like this and really everything that I do on this channel. I wouldn't be able to do it if I didn't have patrons of the podcast that, you know, make it so I can scale back on other kinds of work so that I can dedicate more time to this. But, you know, only if you want to and only if you can afford it. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.